Hi, this is Dr. Joy Kong again. Today, we have a special treat because I've been getting requests to review this video from Bryan Johnson. And as you know, Bryan Johnson got famous because of his $2 million anti-aging routine. So apparently he actually went to the Bahamas to get stem cell treatment. I got some requests from several people asking me to comment on his video. So let's take a listen.
Over the last 3 years, I've spent millions of dollars on a protocol to slow my speed of aging and even reverse the damage that's taken place. My team and I are constantly searching for groundbreaking new therapies, which is why I'm flying to a resort in the Bahamas owned by Tiger Woods and Justin Timberlake, where I'll be injected in all 6 of my major joints with 300 million stem cells taken from young Swedish bone marrow, provided by a revolutionary company called Lab.
Okay, so first of all, the cells were obtained from a Swiss company from the bone marrow. So it's very interesting. For one thing, it's in the Bahamas. Why is it in the Bahamas, right? Not in the US. Second of all, it's from a bone marrow of a young Swedish person. So let me break it down. The bone marrow is actually very similar in composition to the umbilical cord blood, but a lot more mature. What does it mean to be mature? It means the cells have differentiated further, have gained more mature characteristics, and have lost some of the more early, more primitive, and more embryonic stem cell-like characteristics. So what is the caveat of using somebody that's already an adult, cells from somebody that's already an adult? That means the person has gained more expression on the surface of the cells. And when you transplant the cells, then there's more chance for rejection. Okay, it sounds good. You're getting it from a young Swedish man, sounds like from the picture, but then you're also risking these bone marrows have expressed more of his own surface markers. Then there's more chance of rejection. So let's continue.
Aim to give me superhero joints, increased athletic performance, and eliminate all my aches and pains. If this works, we'll be a step closer to my goal of extending human lifespan.
Okay, so he's going to go on and do his routines and chores. But first of all, I do have a question. Why does Bryan Johnson have aches and pains? First of all, I'm older than him. I'm 53. I think he's late 40s. I don't have aches and pains. So why is that? He will say, well, because he did a lot of sports and he had a lot of wear and tear on his joints. What I will tell you is that osteoarthritis, joint issues, is not a wear and tear disease. Sports injury is acute wear and tear, right? Abrupt disruption of the tissue. That I can understand. But if you are healthy, if your body is in a good state, the little bit of wear and tear from sports, your body should fix right up. So just like a little kid, when you go out and play and you hurt yourself, aches and pains, within days, mostly a couple weeks, you should be fine. So because their body's regenerative potential is so vibrant that they can fix themselves up. So my question to Bryan is, why isn't your body fixing itself? Because you're on such incredible anti-aging protocol, right? The superhuman, type of protocol. Why are you not repairing these chronic injuries? So that's one of my questions.
I'm getting 300 million mesenchymal stem cells put into my body in each joint. Stem cells are the body's repair system. Those healthy young Swedish cells should multiply in my body, future-proofing all of my major joints and taking me one step closer to age 18.
Okay, so there's another point to be made. We still don't know how much replication these stem cells injected into the body is able to have. I have asked some of the top scientists from all around the world, hey, when I inject stem cells, how much of it actually stays? How much do they multiply? The answer is all over the place. So the bottom line is actually the multiplication of these stem cells is not significant. So there's some multiplication going on. They do multiply a little bit, but not as much as we think that they could, right? We think that they just keep growing inside your body. And that's probably an exaggeration.
All right. The problem is if we're late, the stem cells are going to be because once the stem cells leave the lab, they've got 2 hours of time. and then they start to deteriorate very quickly.
Okay, that sounds very strange. These cells are supposed to be cryopreserved. So I'm not sure what happens when it leaves the lab. First of all, the cells, these are Swedish. So they're cryopreserved. What we do in our clinic is that we have the cells perfectly frozen in animation, right? They're cryopreserved at least minus 86 degrees, where the cells are metabolically kind of inanimate. So they are not all the little the molecules and the metabolic process have all temporarily been suspended. And the time that you're ready to thaw them out, that's when in our clinic we use a water bath to thaw the cells out at the body temperature of 37 degrees or 98 degrees Fahrenheit. And then the cells come alive, right? So you don't thaw them out until you're ready to give it to the patient. So I don't know where this 2-hour time frame comes from. It sounds very odd.
But part of this trial includes all this necessary documentation. You understand this is a patient-sponsored, ongoing, open-label, single-arm safety and efficacy phase 1 and 2A study for the purposes, procedures, and risks of the research described in this. You understand?
Okay, so this is a clinical study. Interesting. I know some of the clinics will start a clinical study as a protection, and I hope that this actually is a good clinical study that's going to be used to generate publications to help people understand how stem cells work. But I do know a lot of clinics, for example, in the US, may use cells that are not FDA approved, but they will generate a clinical study where they can give the cells to patients. So the stem cells we use in our clinic, we do not need to have a clinical study because these are considered tissue transplants. They're not medications or drugs because they were produced without manipulation. So we don't use enzymes or any chemicals to change the cells in any way. And we don't multiply them. We don't expand them to huge numbers. So whenever you hear about people using stem cells in the number of 100, 200, 300 million cells, you can be pretty sure that these are expanded cells. To generate that kind of huge volume from a single donor, you will likely need to put the cells in a culture and let them grow and grow to huge numbers. And then you take a portion of those cells and you give it to patients. So that's usually the case in the process of this growth of leading to many generations of cells. The cells do tend to degrade. Even with one generation, there's a chance of genetic changes. So definitely by the time you have 4, what we call passages, that's when the container becomes full, the plate becomes full, and you have to change to a new plate. So that's one passage. So definitely by passage 4, you've got a lot higher chance of problems. So as far as clinical studies, no, in the US, people can receive stem cell treatment without being part of a clinical study because we are giving people tissue transplant. Tissue transplant, as you can imagine that can happen with skin grafts, right? Blood transfusions, liver, heart, lung transplants. So all these transplantations do not need an FDA approval because these are not drugs. FDA governs the production and distribution and all that stuff of drugs. But if you're giving somebody a tissue transplant from one person to another, that falls under the governance of American Association of Tissue Banks. So it's not really under the purview of the FDA. So just to give you a framework, why in the United States, a lot of practitioners and clinics are able to provide stem cell treatment is because they are giving these cells as a tissue transplant to help assist the body's ability to repair and regenerate. So again, this one is under a clinical study.
More specifically, the things we can address today that are more practical is I do have some discomfort in my right shoulder that I don't feel any pain. However, in looking at the imaging, there is meaningful deterioration in my joints.
Okay, so meaningful deterioration. Again, Bryan Johnson has spent a lot of money with all these protocols, And why is his body not fixing itself, right? So that's the question. And he's still pretty young. The issue is that we are running out of stem cells. So no matter what kind of incredible protocol you're on, this is the statistics. When you were born, every 1 out of 10,000 cells is a mesenchymal stem cell. So this is the kind that Bryan Johnson is receiving, MSCs, mesenchymal stem cells, or to be named medicinal signaling cells. So these cells are everywhere. They're signaling cells, and they help your body to coordinate this ability to repair. So you have a lot of them when you were born, 1 in 10,000. But when you reach your teenage years, it's already become 1 in 100,000. So tenfold less by the time you reach your teenage years. You think as a teenager, you're vibrant, you're fantastic. Yes, but you don't have nearly the kind of regenerative power as when you were first born. And then by the time you reach your 40s, it becomes 1 in 400,000. So you're 1/4 of what you had as in your teenage years. And by the time you reach your 80s, it's 1 in 2 million. So you have 1/5 of what you had when you were in your 40s. So that just gives you an idea. I mean, I have a graph in one of my presentations, literally drop off like a cliff. So you have less and less stem cells, no matter how much of all these anti-aging protocols you are engaging in. Maybe at one point you will be able to preserve your stem cells. But I think as what Bryan Johnson is demonstrating is that there's still not enough stem cells in his body to compensate and to help the body really keeping up with the repair and calm the inflammation. Let's continue.
Various things that I have that are problematic. So it's not like I don't feel anything, I can't feel any pain, but there's still deterioration that has happened. And so I'm hoping to address both the discomfort in the shoulder and also rejuvenate what has been lost with wear and tear of my joints.
Okay, so I have to dispel the myth of this wear and tear, because it's not just about wear and tear, because research have shown if you have osteoarthritis that you think you've worn and torn your joints, right? But if they put a construct, so kind of an implant that's made of cartilage, and put that construct into your knee, into your osteoarthritic knee, right? You haven't been wearing and tearing that piece of construct. What happens? That piece of construct started to degrade. So it's becoming destroyed by the joint because the joint is inflamed. The joint is very unhealthy, and your body cannot calm it down so that it can, basically stop all this inflammation and start rejuvenating and start repairing. So that's what we're facing. It's not just wear and tear.
If we were to take an MRI on anybody who's, say, 40 years of age, we're going to see some signs of active lifestyle and wear and tear. And the question is, do those correlate with day-to-day discomfort?
Again, I don't think a person has to suffer from wear and tear if your body's able to keep up with the repair. So it just doesn't have, these phrase, it's the wear and tear. No, it's your body not being able to keep up. So just, be honest about it, or at least, realize that's what it is. It's not that you are wearing and tearing it. It's that your body has not been able to be healthy enough and to keep yourself in a balanced state so it can constantly just repair and fix itself.
The cells have traveled 5,000 miles from Sweden to the Bahamas, kept in cryotanks filled with liquid nitrogen. Now they're being thawed and are just 30 minutes away from the clinic. Once they arrive, we'll have a limited window of opportunity to inject them into my body before they expire.
Okay, this is very strange. I don't quite understand why they're not thawed in the clinic, why they're thawed some 30 minutes away from the clinic. It doesn't make good sense. If somebody knows the answer, they can post it, but that's not how I do it in our clinic, and that's not how I teach other physicians.
Okay, the cells just got here. We have 2 hours before they expire. Let's go.
So by thawing it beforehand, now you've got a time frame, right? So in our clinic, usually between the thawing of the cells and injecting, there's no more than 10 minutes in between. So we pretty much get the patient all ready. We thaw the cells. Usually within a few minutes is inside the patient's body. So it's strange.
Cells have just arrived. The sooner we can get them into my body, the better.
We're studying these mesenchymal stem cells that have been called medicinal signaling cells. They're almost like mobile paramedics. And so if you think of our body as made of 37 trillion cells approximately, just coursing through our body. And when we have an injury, like if I were to get off this chair and bang my knee, that would trigger an injury response where these mobile cells, they're called pericytes, and they release and they travel to the area of injury. And so we're trying to mimic that response. And what we found is that in the published literature, these MSCs have the ability to significantly tamper or lower inflammation.
That's true. So these MSCs, as I mentioned, that's all over your body. They actually are all hovering around your blood vessels. I always think of them like geckos, that they're hugging your blood vessels. So when they are outside of your blood vessels, they're called pericytes, like you mentioned. But the moment they sense certain distress signals in the bloodstream, that's when they can squeeze themselves inside the blood vessels and then travel upstream to find where the signal is the strongest. So medicinal signaling cells, that was proposed to be the name to be changed from mesenchymal stem cells to medicinal signaling cells by its discoverer, Dr. Arnold Kaplan. And so because he was stressing how if you keep calling these cells stem cells, you're missing the real mechanism of how these cells help your body heal, which is that they help your body to change its environment to be more balanced in the sense of the immune system and the immune response, but also it tells local stem cells and other stem cells what to do by emitting signals, a lot of times through exosomes that they secrete, that they kind of budding off from their own cell membrane. So these are powerful cells that the main mechanism of why they work is not because that they can replace the tissue that's damaged. It's because they can get to the tissue that needs help and start to tell the immune system to help out. And then also tell the local stem cells. So just remember, in each organ, we all have local stem cells. We don't have to make mesenchymal stem cells to differentiate. We don't have to count on their ability to become a new cell to heal the tissue. That these cells have the capabilities of telling local stem cells, hey, it's your time to put in your work and transform yourself into a local tissue cell, right? So you can start working as part of the healthy tissue. So that's mesenchymal stem cells.
The doctor has only got 4 milliliters of the solution, which is tiny, and he has to balance getting that liquid exactly where it needs to go, with working quickly so the stem cells don't expire before entering my body.
So see the flow of the cells, Brian? It confirms an accurate placement. And also I have no resistance. I'm not hitting anything, which makes it less painful for you.
Oh, wow.
Just, some thought about how the stem cell treatments is performed. That is injected using the aid of ultrasound. Frankly, the knee joint is very, very large joint. It's actually very easy to access. So even without ultrasound machine, it's a very, very simple procedure. It's one of the easiest. So as far as adding stem cells into the local joint, the joint actually can take quite a bit of fluid. So what we do in our clinic is that we actually combine PRP, so platelet-rich plasma, along with these stem cells, because not only PRP is kind of the nourishment for stem cells, but also they provide some scaffolding. So it's very helpful to have them in the knee joint so that they're synergistic with the stem cells. And in addition, we can also add a little bit of ozone, which promotes tissue regeneration. So there are different modalities we add on. We also use certain light therapy that can further activate the cells and allow the cells to stay in the area better and to just be more vibrant. In addition, I want to make a point about osteoarthritis. So if you just had a sports injury, I can see how you can just inject locally and that probably can help pretty well. Although from personal experience, when I broke my heel, my calcaneus 3 years ago, when I jumped off a huge rock and landed on a little rock, I was injecting cells locally and it did help. It promoted repair, but I got impatient with the progress. That's when I did an IV treatment. So that really accelerated the repair process. So the healing probably got faster by 2 to 3 times faster because of the IV, the involvement of your entire body. So another thing about osteoarthritis is that this is a chronic inflammatory state. Like I mentioned, this is no longer an acute sports injury. So when it's chronic inflammatory state, that means your body cannot keep up. Your body has not been able to mount the repair response. So if we can kind of rejuvenate your body's response, right? We help your whole body to function better. Then you can really produce a much better result. This is why when I approach larger joints like the knee or the hip, we actually do an IV infusion and local injection at the same time. What happens with the IV infusion is that the cells will travel and kind of the blood supply will end up nourishing the outer 1/3 of the cartilage because only the inner 2/3 is nourished by the synovial fluid. But whatever I put in the IV, intravenous route, takes a very long time to actually percolate, eventually get into the synovial fluid, probably a couple months. So you want to attack from both angles. That will give you the best result. So that's just a treatment approach that I believe it's superior.
Okay, little pinch, 3. Freaked out by needles, this would be the point to turn away from the television set.
Let's see it.
I warned you. Usually in my practice, I will conceal this. So the patient, I'll be talking and they won't see it, but you will feel a little pressure because again, I don't put numbing down into the joint. So
Yep.
you just sharpen me up, just try to relax. Yeah, just do your best. I know there's a needle in you to try to keep still.
Yeah, I'm glad that he does not put the numbing agent down into the joint because we know the opiates that are used for these the anesthetics can be detrimental to the health of the stem cells.
All right, with just 17 minutes to spare, we got all the cells in. 150 million today, 150 million tomorrow. So success on day 1.
When you know you're here to help yourself, but your body can react and potentially have some inflammation, which may not be uncommon post-procedure. So you want to take it easy for 2 to 3 days. You can bear weight as tolerated, but I don't want you exercising for a few days.
So it's true that after a stem cell injection that your body can start to mount this sometimes an acute, more inflammatory response because all these cells are galvanized to come to the local area to help you repair. So sometimes temporarily a person can feel a little worse before they feel better. There may be more swelling, more tightness, but a lot of times that could be a good sign predicting long-term success. So a person needs to be patient, kind of, work with the temporary discomfort. Eventually, all that will be going away, probably within 2-3 days.
Time to check on my dad, who was getting just 1 stem cell injection straight into his bloodstream.
Yeah, so the IV route is definitely one of the mainstays that can be utilized, and that's been shown across, lots of research studies. Majority of the therapies in clinical trials actually are administered through the route of the blood. So either injecting into the vein or the arteries. There's some concern about trapping in the lungs. And I think that's really minimal because over time, within days, the cells do travel outside of the lungs and get into all the other tissue. Also, the lungs, if you do have some lung pathology, then the cells are going to stay there, right? That's what you want. You want the cells to stay there to help you heal your lungs. But if your lungs are fine, then they will travel outside and start to help you with all these other organs. But again, also remember, the cells don't just exert its benefit by going to an area and, rarely actually become local tissue cells. They function by sending out signals, even if they're not quite at the place where you want them to be. As they've seen that even with intramuscularly injected stem cells, the cells can stay metabolically active up to 100 days in the muscles and continue to secrete these biologically active molecules to help your body repair. So it's almost like little, pharmacy depot, right? A little depot of for drug production, the natural drugs produced by these intelligent cells. And then when it comes to helping the condition of the brain, like Bryan's father, the MSCs have been known to cross the blood-brain barrier. So I know there's a concern, will they get to the brain? Yes, it can, and especially with people who have brain conditions. There may be disruption in the blood-brain barrier. So it's even easier for these cells to get across. But if you want more cells to get into the area, you may want to use other methods. In our clinic, we actually will add a mannitol pre-infusion to help open up the blood-brain barrier more. And we can also administer the cells through the intranasal route, where the cells, not so much the cells, that's when we use the exosome. We can also inject cells into the nasal membrane, which will be uptaken by olfactory and trigeminal nerves into the brain. But we can also just use exosomes, which are the secretion products from the cells, and use those intranasally, and those will go across the cribriform plate and get into your brain. So there are a lot more things you can do when it comes to the brain.
Finished up the day, so we did both my knees and the right hip, and no one's ever done 6 joints in 24 hours. We split it up 3 and 3, and it turns out it's a lot. My entire body, it just feels like it's stiffened up and it can't move. And then when I get up and walk, it feels like I've been in a car crash. My body just aches. So I think I'm a little warm. I'm shivering, so I think I'm going to go to bed.
Well, if you are feeling warm and shivering and you are feeling very stiff, so the inflammatory response, is understandable. But if you're getting a systemic shivering, your body is mounting some kind of rejection to these cells. So there's either these cells during the process of being expanded have been secreting inflammatory molecules that can promote these type of reaction. And some people have a lot worse, and it can be categorized as a cytokine storm, right? So Tony Robbins talked about it, how he had a cytokine storm and he thinks that's normal for stem cell therapy. Well, if you use stem cells that have been expanded, that could be a common occurrence. But at our clinic, using cells that are completely unexpanded and unmanipulated, I have never seen cytokine storm, and I don't see fevers and chills. So I think this probably illustrates what can happen when you use an adult source cells when they are more differentiated, right? Growing more of its own characteristics. And then also when you start to expand them, that further changes cells and that further promotes the possibility of rejection and inflammatory signals. So let's continue.
We're going to get the second mesenchymal stem cells injected. Yesterday was both knees and the right hip. Today is the left hip and both shoulders. I lost bending capacity in my knees. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
And how do you feel today?
I feel fine. I can't bend my knees,
Yeah.
which is probably expected,
Yeah.
but I feel great.
We can check your knees too today just to see if there's any fluid post-procedure. Just curious, just to check. Yeah. How about your hip?
That's feeling a lot better. Yeah. I was trying to just bend my knees and I can't go further than that.
Yeah, what I tell my patients is, you're here to help yourself, but your body responds as if it's been injured, and that's part of the healing process. And typically with these cell treatments, they're natural based and they take time. I tell my patients it took years to develop these issues. It takes weeks to months to improve them. So it's early on.
I figured.
So I just want to give people a little bit of a perspective as far as what to expect right after a treatment. So definitely for him, the fevers and chills, or, and I don't know if he had fevers, but he said he felt very warm, and the chills and the poor sleep. I think it could be a reaction to the side effects of these expanded cells. But either way, if you're using unexpanded native cells, there are 3 stages that you can expect with repair. The first stage will be the anti-inflammatory stage, which can happen very fast because some people can have quick reduction in pain and in swelling within 24 hours, significant improvement. So that can happen. But for some people, there's more of an inflammation, that there's temporarily more swelling and more pain. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad and then you're not going to do well with the therapy. It probably means that you can do quite well. But there are different types of responses. But the anti-inflammatory response happens very fast. Think about these, calming the inflammation as signaling, the type of signal reduction, the inflammatory signal reduction. So you can actually achieve pretty fast response from these musculoskeletal repair. But for other types of conditions as well, I've given an example in one of my videos about a patient who had a brain condition, who couldn't even have the volition to lift up a knife and fork to feed herself because she's severely demented. And the day after the therapy, she was able to take up a knife and fork and started feeding herself after not being able to do so for 2 months. So huge, huge change. And I think that's the anti-inflammatory effect at work. But over longer period of time, that's when you need to repair the tissue, right? The cells, the bad cells need to be taken away and the good cells need to be born and start performing its functions. So that will take days to weeks or even longer for, certain other tissues, especially for the brain. It may take months. So that is the tissue rebuilding stage. And there's a longer stage at play, which is the genetic remodification, the genetic, I think of it as a rejuvenation, revamping of the health of your DNA, which is performed to a great extent by the signals sent out by these mesenchymal stem cells. So these exosomes, the little packets of information, they're nanoparticles and full of these proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids, including microRNA. And these little pieces of RNA can actually cross the cell nucleus and repair the DNA, bring them back to a younger and more healthy state. And those effects can last for much longer period. So there's a lot of nuances to stem cell therapy.
When I was feeling all this, I thought, this is good. we're on the right track.
Something's happening.
That's right.
Because I believe that this could be like a really good maintenance type thing that you do once a year or something long term to prevent progression over time.
Yeah, maintenance is important. I think you can avoid a number of stem cell treatment that you're going to need by living a healthy lifestyle, eating healthier, exercising, right? That activates all these genes that help you stay younger. You can also do detoxification. So avoid the toxin buildup, protect yourself from EMF, optimize your hormones, optimize your gut health, right? Help those little critters to help you. So if you are doing all these things right, you may not need stem cells as often at all. I'm doing it for anti-aging purposes because I know there's a trajectory, right? There's going to be a decline. If you don't try to bring back the train of aging, then the train is going forward. For 100% of humanity, the train is going forward. So you have to actively do something to bring it back. And stem cell therapy is a powerful way to bring it back. And that has been shown in various studies. So I presented some of the data in one of the lectures I gave. Is called the anti-aging benefits of stem cells. So if you just look up anti-aging and Joy Kong, on YouTube, you will find that lecture. So that presents some data and it actually shows what happens in animals when you give them regular IV stem cells, from a young source. The animals not only can live about 30% longer, but they are much healthier. So they extended their health span, the time that they're healthy, in almost all the markers, whether or not is the neurotransmitter, growth factors, or toxic buildup, senescent markers, everything was reverted back to the younger state. So it's for real that we can use stem cells to keep you in a younger state. As far as maintenance, I do think if you want to maintain in a younger state, right, instead of deteriorating, then consider stem cells as one of the most powerful tools that you can utilize. And I always say, we're so lucky because in the past, you can be the most powerful king, powerful queen, Queen Elizabeth, whatever, some of the greatest rulers in history. Everybody ages and dies. And, it doesn't look very, very good, right? They age pretty quickly. So we as common people, right? We don't have to be the rulers of the world. And we have access to this technology that we can actually slow down this process. And I'm doing an experiment on myself, just like Bryan Johnson's doing it, his way. I'm not spending nearly as much as he's spending. I think it's actually working quite well. I can see the changes in myself. I started doing IV stem cells on myself since I was 45. So I just turned 53, and I could see myself reverting back to a younger state. We say that I'm happy to accumulate the years on earth, right? We just keep accumulating, but we don't have to degrade biologically. So accumulating years without biological degradation. So that's the goal.
Accept that arthritis is inevitable,
Right.
or can we intervene early and eventually cut it off?
Yeah.
So it's a new way of thinking.
That's right. So I am currently in the penalty box. I'm on doctor's orders to rest, but I've got tea. I just made myself some peppermint.
You must rest. So that's one thing that I tell my patients: do not get overly confident, because so common when people get stem cell treatment, they feel so much better. They feel like $1,000,000 and I feel like I'm 25 again. And then they go out, start doing, physical activities that end up tearing the same problematic joint or tendon because they are engaging in drastic activities too early. Because I always say, think about a newly building, repairing tissue as just visualize when you bump into something and you form a scab, right? You injured your skin. There's a scab forming. The scab is quite fragile. If you run into a door, sometimes it breaks it and it falls off, and there you start all over again, right? So you want to respect that the tissue healing would take time. The correct matrix, the strong matrix, right? That's the final formation is going to take time. So give it weeks to a couple months for it to fully heal, depending on what tissue we're looking at. Some tissues heal a little faster than others. So you want to respect that there's a biological process, and don't get overly jubilant and start to, end up sabotage your own process.
I'm ready for this. I love this. It's my favorite thing in the whole world. Everything about it.
3, 2, 1. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, now we're going to proceed with the shoulder. Perfect. Not too bad.
Not too bad.
And the procedure is complete. Okay, you did amazing. You see how we saved that last? When I started doing this, we didn't realize like the most uncomfortable or unpleasant. We'd start early, and the patient would say like, how many more of these do we need to do?
Yeah.
So of all the areas, your right shoulder will be more sore than the other because A, it had more symptoms, and B, that area is technically a little more, uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it's usually for a few days up to a week. Just listen to your body.
Yeah, it feels like I broke my shoulder.
Oh my God, sore.
And what we're trying to show here is, can you actually rejuvenate the joints to a more youthful state in these kind of proactive measures? And it's expensive because it's new technology, but as it scales, it will become lower cost.
That is correct. And I've been talking about, there's one video I talked about the cost of stem cell therapy. And I'm really very hopeful that one day this is going to be a very commonplace, that anybody, before doing anything, before surgery or as soon as they get sick, they're going to do stem cell therapy, and it's not going to be no big deal. And everybody after age 30 will start taking regular stem cells to replenish the pool of stem cells so they can stay young and stay very healthy and very resilient.
This is also Project Don't Die Dad, and we're doing well. So this is his third therapy. First, we did plasma. Second, we did the gene therapy, and this is the third, the mesenchymal stem cells. He got 100 million yesterday. So Dad is getting access to the best therapies in the world. So kids, again, a reminder to take care of your parents. They took care of you when you were, not able to take care of yourself. So it's a nice thing to do, to be mindful of others and their needs. So hopefully you can continue to follow along, and let's do this together.
Okay, well, that's nice that he's doing this for his dad. And I definitely hope that we all, take care of our parents as much as we can. And especially with these kind of cutting edge therapy, even when a person is quite old, illustrated by clinical studies or animal studies, even when an animal is at an advanced age, by giving regular IV stem cells, you can extend their lifespan. For example, when this one study showed that the mice at human equivalent age of 75 years of age, when they were given stem cells, the amount of time they have left to live was extended by 3 times. So that basically they lived 3 times as long for the amount of time they have left. So it can make a huge difference for someone who's even older. And it has been shown to be helpful in reducing frailty, right? One of the main causes of death actually is the frailty, loss of muscle mass and coordination, falls and all that. So a powerful therapy, and hope you guys enjoyed me giving my input and insights into this treatment, because there's a lot of confusion around this therapy, a lot of hype and a lot of myths. So I hope this helps somewhat. If you like this video and you think this may benefit somebody, please share with them and let them understand a little bit more about stem cell therapy, and subscribe to my channel, because I'm going to keep making helpful videos, and I'm going to spend some more time and more energy into making these videos for you. So thank you again, and until next time.